Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Travis Mark, and today I have the distinct pleasure of speaking with the Infamists vocalist, Riley Rogers. The Infamists are a three-piece band based out of Texas, and we're going to get into all things original music and band-related today, since Riley's such a prime candidate for such questions. As usual, if you're enjoying these episodes, please share them with your like-minded friends. And don't forget to give us a rating or review. I know I ask it all the time, but it's really such a small thing. Even if you don't want a review, just give us a quick thumbs up or follow. It really helps us, and I truly appreciate it. But for now, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, please welcome the one, the only, Riley Rogers. Riley, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. Thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to our conversation. This is a weird one, and I start every interview like this. I thought about sort of changing the format, and then I thought, it's kind of cool. So my first and last questions are always going to be the same, at least for the unforeseeable future. But what I ask all my guests to do is, rather than me do this like big harp up introduction on you, because obviously I find out a lot about you during my research, etc., I ask, could you potentially give us like a brief introduction? You don't have to go that in detail unless you want to, but just like some bullet points as to who Riley Rogers is. Tell us a little bit about the Infamists. Tell us a little bit about your gigging history, where you're at in life, so that as our listeners listen to your answers and this interview, they just have maybe a little bit of a better understanding as to where you're coming from.
Okay, sure. So thanks for having me. Like you said, my name's Riley. I play guitar and I sing in a band from Dallas, Fort Worth called the Infamists. We've been going, I think next year will be our 12th year. So we started out at the University of North Texas when we were in college. None of us were there for music. I think our drummer was into radio, TV, film, and me and the bass player were both history students. So started the band in college from a Craigslist ad. They used to do those musicians wanted pages, and all three of us were on there looking for a band. I was new in town. I'm from Amarillo. So I didn't know anybody. And we met on Craigslist. And I don't know if bands do that anymore. I guess with how social media has gone, it's probably easier to do it other ways. But started out doing that. Played pretty regularly. I think the last few years, minus COVID, we normally do about 50 shows a year in the region. But we've been doing Dallas-Fort Worth a long time. Then, just try to do a record every couple years. Again, the first one was all the way back in, I guess, 2015. So pretty regular release schedule, pretty regular gig schedule. The music's kind of like bluesy hard rock. Again, that's a power trio. All three of us are singing now. So it's got kind of a stoner rock edge, lots of guitar, blues-based stuff. I basically describe it as like ZZ Top if you like kind of hit it with a cattle prod a little bit. It's a little bit more aggressive, but that's basically the sound. And we've been playing around for about 12 years. I live in Denton, so we do a lot of stuff in the Denton scene, but we also do Dallas and Fort Worth pretty regularly. Great place to have a band. I don't think anyone wants to stop anytime soon. And we're currently promoting our album that came out in April called Live Evil. So that's our newest one. And we're also working on the follow-up. So I think we're about 7 songs into the next record too.
That's amazing, man. So let's pull it back a little bit more, if you don't mind. Talk to me a little bit about what led you to initially pick up the guitar. And you mentioned that everybody in the band's singing now, but I know that you're the main singer. So did you start singing at the same sort of time, or was that like a much later thing? Or was it before the guitar?
Yeah, so I actually picked up guitar and this is kind of a weird story to tell people, but when I was probably about 13, I was watching this movie called Joe Dirt, and it's got David Spade in it, and he's like this guy with this mullet, and there's this scene where he's just listing off like his favorite rock bands, and I'm watching that movie, and then I thought, my dad has all those records, so I just went and started listening to all these like classic rock records my dad had, and then I went to church camp. And, I thought the music at church camp was pretty dumb. I wasn't really into it, obviously. But there was this guy there with real long hair, and he had a black Gibson SG. And I think he knew like every AC/DC song you could think of. And we actually got in trouble because he was showing me how to play Highway to Hell while we're at church camp.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and that summer when I got home from church camp, my birthday rolled around and I went to Walmart and I bought one of those cheap Walmart guitars and just started teaching myself and the Ultimate Guitar website, just learning tabs and obviously doing the Smoke on the Water, Sweet Child of Mine, all the forbidden riffs, learning all that stuff. So that's kind of how I got started on guitar, and I really didn't start singing until probably about like 2011, and it was really just because I was from a small town and couldn't really find anybody that wanted to play music, let alone the kind of music I liked. Everybody was into kind of the more metalcore stuff of the late 2000s, and I was into classic rock, and I kind of just started singing just because band needed a singer. Kind of hard to make an instrumental thing interesting for home or for a show, so I kind of just started doing it, and I've always been a pretty decent writer, so the lyrics I really enjoyed writing. But I just started singing, and as we recorded records over time, I kind of was like, okay, like I'm kind of doing this, and maybe this style of singing doesn't work, or this was a weird note, and I kind of just hear myself over time, what could be better, and now it's kind of gotten to the point where it's pretty passable, like I definitely don't tell people I'm a singer first. But I think it's gotten pretty passable. I like the vocals a lot on our last record. So that's kind of the biggest change for the band is the other guys started singing as well, Ryan and Spencer. And, we've just tried to be a little more conscious of, the riffs are cool. And, we love the guitar based stuff. But just paying attention to the melodies and the tones on the vocals and stuff, and just being a little more vocally conscious. But I'm by no means like trained. I didn't go to choir. I don't. If you ask me to like sing an A right now, I wouldn't know. I kind of have to have the guitar to sing. But I think I've sort of found my voice and the tone I like a little bit, and kind of the character I put into the vocals, I think is working out pretty decently, but I'm definitely a guitar player first, if that makes any sense.
Hey, well, listen, I checked out enough of your music to know that you're doing fine at both, sir. What I want to do is I want to jump straight into band life because, I do a lot of these interviews and I'm super fortunate to say that, but a lot of the guys that I talk to are purely hired guns. And then I talk to guys who are like band guys, and it's like, It's funny because they such similar paths, but they are so different at the same time. And I figure because you've been in a band with the same guys for as long as you have, you'd be a prime candidate to talk about some of these band things. So we're going to jump straight into band life. And I want to talk, predominantly, obviously, about the Infamists. My first question, and there's going to be a few, so if some of these come across as slightly ignorant, I apologize. Yourself, Spencer, and Ryan have managed to keep that lineup for over a decade. Now, I've been in bands my entire life. I know how difficult this is. I know it's not an easy feat. So talk me through your band dynamics, the different personalities, and what you guys do or don't do to have kept the chemistry and the camaraderie as long as you have.
Okay, yeah, and that's a good question because that's something where all three of us are like pretty proud of because we have a lot of friends in bands, and we see how hard it is for like every week, someone needs a new bass player, a new drummer, and the hired gun thing, like you said. I think the thing that makes it work for us is being goal oriented, and obviously nobody's had whenever you like get married or you become a homeowner or maybe your day job gets really serious or you have a kid, none of us have really stepped into any of that. We all have day jobs that we're pretty good at. But nobody's married or has kids yet or anything where the band becomes a secondary thing. It's definitely been, I think, the main priority for all three of us for so long, and we just like playing together. We like a lot of the same music, but we also each like different things a little bit, and we get along really well. We take time to do things that aren't band related. Like we'll go see the Rolling Stones, or we'll go to a movie, or we'll just go out drinking, and we take time to do things that's not business related. But we all try to just constantly have something we're working on too. Like I tell a lot of bands, if they kind of hit that weird slump where people aren't really getting along, my advice is always start a new song, because if we're kind of like all feeling unmotivated, but then we come to practice and one of us just has this some riff or this great idea, it totally reinvigorates, the enthusiasm. And I think that's why we've put out a lot of records, is because whenever things are kind of feeling a little low energy, one new great song that everybody loves kind of brings that back up and the morale gets a little bit better. Um, and, we just try to have goals, try to have like, what's the next thing we can do? We try not to be satisfied. Um, like I said, we've been playing the songs off this Live Evil record pretty religiously all year, but the album's not even out yet, and we've already begun working on, or it's not been out for a year. I'm sorry, but we're already working on the next one. We're already over halfway done with the next one, so it's just keeping everybody interested, keeping people from getting bored. I don't think any of us really want to play the same 10 songs, for that for the next 3 years. We kind of want to add some new stuff. Um, but yeah, that and taking time to just hang out, not business related. Also giving each other space. There are times where if we have 3 gigs in a week and a recording session, it's like, all right, let's skip practice because I think everybody needs a day to like stay home and watch Dr. Phil and, drink a beer and be alone. So having space, being goal oriented, doing stuff not band related, and luckily we've been fortunate where it's still everybody's top priority. So I know that's kind of hard for a lot of people. They have other things in their lives, but we're fortunate that we get along well, and it's the most important thing to all three of us. So it's been a pretty good tenure. We're pretty proud of it. Like you said, I think we've had Spencer and I have been in it the whole time. And we did have one drummer who started out with us, our original drummer, and he played, I think, maybe 3 or 4 shows, and then we had a fill-in drummer for a couple shows, and then Ryan came in probably at the end of the first year of the band, and we found him on Craigslist, just like the original 2 did, and yeah, it's honestly kind of amazing when I think about it because we're all in our 30s now, and I think when we started, we were 19. So it's
Crazy.
been a big part of our lives for a long time.
Yeah, and people who don't explore this road, I don't think they understand how much time it can consume. I mean, being in a band, it's funny you mentioned the hanging out outside the band, giving each other space, this and that. It's, to sum it up in a word, it's a relationship. And, a lot of people don't see that. They see you having a good time on stage or at a gig, and I think they think it's all that, just a party all the time, But, bands can be tough, and like especially if somebody is feeling unmotivated or not wanting to be there anymore, to have those conversations. It's no different than being in a relationship where you've got to kind of be like, okay, what's going on? Why is this not working out? It's a demanding thing, man.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes people have like personal needs, like, maybe they're a little burnt out on the rigorous gig schedule, or, sometimes you just need a day off. But another thing I didn't mention was, when we sell merch and, play gigs, you mentioned the hired gun thing. For like all 12 years we've been doing it, I think there might have been a couple times each of us, got a little bit of money out of whatever gig we did or something, but we put all of that into a shared account. And, when you play 50 plus gigs a year and you just save all the money from the merch and everything, like we don't even take gas money, if that. And, it ends up like the next year, like, oh, hey, we have enough money to go make another record now. So, we've been pretty good about, looking at the bigger picture and realizing that, we all have day jobs. Do I really need to split the door up so everybody can make a little bit? Because we would all rather make another record rather than, get paid ourselves for every little gig we do. We'd rather just be able to have the record paid for and the promotion for it and all of that just taken care of. So it's definitely, it for the level that we do it at, it's definitely demanded some selflessness. And it's just been really cool that all three of us, that hasn't been an issue. I don't care if I go home after a gig with no money, because I know that when we go to record, we can just go in there, no stress, and it's paid for, and we worked hard for it.
Yeah.
So that's been a big part of it too, is, I can't even imagine how it would be going if we had somebody in the band that was a hired gun, because it's like, man, it's going to be really hard to save up to do more exciting things whenever all three of us aren't, just dedicated to like, yeah, put it in the bank account and save it for whatever's next. So
yeah, totally, dude. You mentioned promotion there, so let's talk about marketing and promotion for a little while, a couple of minutes. I saw that several of your songs were in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, on certain sort of platforms. Mm-hmm. So talk me through your PR or your marketing. Do you guys take out marketing strategies? Do you put money into that, or is that all organic? Because this is something that, again, I see a lot of bands. I'm stereotyping, but so many bands will make a great record and no one ever knows that they made that great record. And it's like we're living in this world where it's like we're in a sea of great records and everything's so easily accessible that you've got to, unfortunately, unless you've gone viral somehow, but usually that's a strategy-based thing too. So you've got to figure out some kind of marketing campaign to get out there, at least in what I've seen. So what do you guys do?
Yeah, I completely agree. That was the newest thing we learned. And like I said, like we're always trying to learn. Like I listen to the old vocal tracks I used to do, and it's like, these little inflections, these weird characteristic things I do, fix them for next time. And, so we're always trying to like learn what we could do better. And the thing we learned this year was just how important it is to actually promote. And, I remember when this record was being, when we were almost done with Live Evil, I listened to the masters and we had a band meeting, and I told them, I was like, guys, I think that every record we get better, it's always an improvement. So we're going in the right direction. But this was the one where I was like, we need to really find a way to get this out there, because like you said, I think a lot of bands make great records and then they put it out, and really the only people who know it's there are like their social media following and their close friends and their family and stuff. And, but you think about what's a good streaming number for like a new single to get? Like, are you happy with 300? Is 10,000 good? And, if I got it, let's say we put out a single and every single one of my Facebook friends, every single one of my Instagram followers, everybody I possibly know let's say they all go and listen to that new single, that's probably going to be less than 10,000. And, like if everyone I know in my life went and streamed it once or twice, it'd probably still be less than 10,000. Now, if you're on some levels, that's an amazing number. But, we've had releases before where it's like this song got 1,000, this song, got 400. And we were just relying on the people that we knew and our social media platforms. And I just told the band, I was like, this record is the first one we've made where we need to really figure out a way to get people to listen to this. I'm thinking like tens of thousands, not just 1,000 streams. How can we really get this out there? Because it was kind of a confidence thing, because we've made records before and I like them. There's like some records where I still like maybe half of it. There's some records where I'm like, I wish I hadn't done this. And I would say, we've made some bad ones and we've made some good ones. And this was the one where I was like, this is very above average. This is great. This is a good record. So we started just, thinking about like, what can we do? Let's spend a little bit of money. Let's like really grassroots and grow like this album release. And so what we did was we just didn't shut up about it, for one. Like every Instagram post for like 6 months, I was like, Live Evil out on, I think it was April 6th. I can't remember the release date, but just every Instagram post, so that by the time it came out, all of our friends, all of our following, they knew the name of the record. They knew it was coming. We hadn't shut up about it. We treated it like something that was special. And, sometimes you see posts that are like, hey, new single or a new album, and then that's kind of it. And you kind of just sit around and wait. Whereas with this one, we were like, we're just going to be annoying about it. We're going to post about it every day, every post, even after it comes out, it's out, and, we even like went as far as like, social media sometimes will block your posts if it's got a link in it, or if it thinks it's promotional, or if you don't boost it or run an ad or whatever. So we just sent it to like 100 people each. You're like, hey, in case you missed, like I texted it to people. We DM'd it to people. I probably emailed like 50 or so blogs, and I think just getting everybody off the bench. And, we asked all of our friends and family and everything, like, hey, don't just listen to it, share it, send it to, if you don't like it, send it to somebody. And I think, the mentality I had was like, we're a 3-man band. When the release strategy was, let's pretend like we have 400 people in the band and let's get them all to share it, all to comment on it, to send it to somebody, just to help us in any kind of way. They don't even have to buy it, just help us. And that worked really well. I think everybody we possibly could have reached in DFW was at least aware it came out. Like I said, though, how many streams do you really want? So we started looking at other ways to market, meta ads, Facebook, Instagram ads, where you can boost a post, but you can also actually run your own advertisement. And that worked well. It works better for some people than others. There was a Bandcamp feature called the Doom Charts, where every month they do like the top 40 heavy stoner rock, doom metal, just, psychedelic rock kind of stuff. And if you make the top 40 out of the hundreds of people they have review all these albums, then they do a feature on you. So our album came in at number 40. So that helped us on Bandcamp. Like the Bandcamp downloads and the Bandcamp streams just exploded. After that, we had another guy. He runs a stoner rock channel called Weedian. He featured us on like his Best of Texas bands. It was a compilation record that helped us out immensely on Spotify and Bandcamp. And Weedian, it just started with an email. I just emailed him and, I said, hey, introduce myself. Think you might like this. Would you be interested in maybe posting about it or something? And then he started, I actually don't know his real name, but he started helping us, and that helped exponentially. And really just, finding a way to advertise whatever way works for you, but also getting everyone off the bench and trying to get as many people as you can to treat it as importantly as you think it is. And like I said, I really believed in this record. So I was like, I need everybody that gives any kind of a shit to just make a comment, make a post, don't even buy it. Just, do something to help us out. And everybody came through. And I think if you do that legwork and you really treat it as special as you think it is, and you can get everybody off the bench, and then you can invest a little bit of money, whatever you have, into some sort of Meta ad or Google ad, YouTube ad, Spotify marquee. Spotify's got all these great tools you can pay to get your streams up a little bit just to get it out there. But don't spend nothing is basically my message. Like, if you believe in the record, budget something and figure out, buy a billboard on the highway, do something though, but you can't do nothing. And that's what this record taught us. And it's like, all right, so next time we make a record, we need to 20% of the cost should maybe be planned for promo is basically what we learned.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's true, man. Talk to me a little bit about your writing, the creative process in general. How do you guys go about this? Is it mainly you writing? Do you write together as a group? How do you sort of settle on splits?
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff.
Well, the splits are easy. Like I said, we don't really get into the economics of it a lot. We're all just pretty selfless about it. Everything's three ways, so royalties come in, or, whatever money comes our way where it's ASCAP or whatever, it's all just 33% each. We don't mess with that. Well, Riley wrote the lyrics, so he gets 40. We don't even do that. There are songs where I might have written most of it, but we still split it three ways. So the splitting part's pretty easy. As far as the creative process, we all contribute. There's definitely no one songwriter. Sometimes we'll do practice and one of us will just have a cool chord progression or a cool riff. Sometimes we have a cool drum beat and we'll start with that. Sometimes there are songs where I write probably like 60-70% of it, and then the other guys help me finish it. There's other times where they write most of the song and I help them finish it. So it kind of just depends on what song in particular, because there were probably ones where it's like, this was a group effort. This one was written in one day. This one took a few months. This one was mostly me with them helping. This one was written by our drummer. A best song on Spotify, Death by Misadventure, was actually written by our drummer. And he wrote the guitar, he wrote the lyrics, he wrote the melody. Like, that's his song. I think all I did on that, other than playing on it, was I wrote a little slide guitar part for it. And I maybe helped with the lyrics a little bit, but that's like 90% our drummer. And that's our best song. So it kind of just depends. Anybody can contribute, and anybody, everybody's allowed to have a voice. And we just try to be honest with each other, where it's like, I think we could maybe do better, or like, hey, that riff is cool, maybe let's put it in a different key. And we just try to be coachable and not be married to each of our own ideas, because there's things I have that I think I'm really excited about, and then the band's kind of like, whatever. So we just move on, and we end up getting a pretty good product that way, because it's super collaborative. And you can probably kind of tell, like, at least I can, like, okay, Riley probably wrote this one, Spencer probably wrote this one, but there was definitely like no rule or no like dog as far as the creative process goes. It's like some of our best songs are the most collaborative ones. So
yeah. Would I be correct in assuming or implying that you, in addition to your creative role, you seem to manage a lot of the band's admin? Everything seems to come back to your number and your email.
Yeah, we divide it up. I've sort of taken on more of the social media role, like all the most of the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the TikTok, all that's most of the time it's me. One of the other guys might make a post every now and then, but I kind of commandeer that. Our drummer Ryan handles the finances. He keeps the money in the safe place, and Kind of keeps that under control and what we budget for. And then Spencer does a lot of the networking. He used to be a booking agent, so he books most of the shows. He curates most of the lineups we're on. Um, Spencer also handles all of the merch designs. So, like all the T-shirts and stickers and album artwork and stuff we get done. Spencer's the almost 100% doing that. So, basically, like Ryan will hang on to the money and the budgeting and finances. Spencer will go decide what we spend the money on, and then I'm the one that promotes it. So it's kind of like a chain.
That's actually so cool. I find
Yeah.
that some of the stuff you've discussed has always been the stuff that's worked out in bands that I've been in. When everybody has a role, everybody has a certain responsibility, etc., etc., etc. It seems like resentment doesn't seem to settle in. If it comes down to one person, in my experience at least, it always seems to be there's a peak and there's a time, because at some point that person, whoever he or she may be, starts to feel as though everybody else is dead weight. And sure, they do their playing, but they just seem to show up and play. So that's a great way to do it. And, to anybody listening, if you're in a band and you're not doing that kind of thing, I would strongly advise that you take Riley's advice there, because that is a good way to do it. And I'm not saying you got to divide it how he said, but give everybody a job within the band.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about scenes. Okay. For any of the listeners of this podcast, I'm sure by now they think I'm obsessed with Fort Worth's scene, because I've had so many guests from Fort Worth. And I've said this before, in fact, just 2 or 3 episodes ago, there's something in the water down there, man. I don't know what it is. And I mean, you guys are obviously based Dallas, Fort Worth, that kind of scene has a crazy music scene. But let's flip it on its head slightly. So what would your approach be if suddenly, and this is all hypothetical, of course, you had to relocate and start again? What networking or get into the scene type tips do you think you could perhaps share?
Okay. Yeah. Well, where I'm from, the town I grew up in, we maybe had like 2 or 3 venues, and you know, hard to find people to play with. But the music scene was tight. Everybody that wanted to play music, you knew each other. Um, but there just wasn't a lot of opportunity. And then getting down here, I love being a DFW because Denton has its thing going on. Dallas has its own thing. Fort Worth has its own thing. And then all these cities in the middle, we can go play a brewery in some like mid city. So, it's definitely possible to stay busy and gig multiple times a week if you want to. And all these scenes are like within an hour of each other. So I just love it down here. I mean, the first time I moved to Denton, one of the first shows I went to was just a house party with bands playing in the living room. And I just thought, I know this is super common here in a college town, but where I'm from, there wasn't any band playing in somebody's living room. So the opportunity here is definitely awesome. And you're right, there is something special about DFW, and all the music scene, the three of the triangle, they're all a little different. Fort Worth bands sound a little bit different than Dallas, and Denton bands sound different than the other two. But I guess my suggestion would be to get involved in, if you're relocating, just go out and shake hands and drink beer with people because like I think I've booked more gigs and met more other bands and made more friends just by going to shows on nights where I don't have a show. I'm just going to go check out, hey, this is a rock show, a metal show. I'm going to go check it out, how the other bands like their set, follow through and follow them on Instagram, add maybe a member or two on Facebook, develop a relationship and a friendship with these people. And then they start saying, oh, well, Riley likes our music. He's been to our last 3 shows. He has a band. Who do we need to open for us at our album release? And then you get the call because you showed support for what other people are doing and you were selfless about it. And it leads to gigs. And then every gig opportunity, you shake the other band's hands, you help them load their gear if they need it, you add them on Facebook, you keep in touch, you buy their merch when they have it, and then you make more friends. And then, it just kind of spider webs into this network of making friends and following through. And I've sent lots of booking emails and gotten no reply. I've asked a lot of people, hey, can we do a show together sometime? I like what you're doing. And you get no reply. But if you're consistent and you're just relentless at like taking time out of your day to go to a show that you have no involvement in, but when that bass player gets off stage and you tell him you liked his set and then you add him on Facebook, he's probably going to want to be your friend because you're a nice guy. And you know, I've I've booked more shows just going to shows that I'm just a spectator at, but I'm just supportive of other people. And that leads to my band having shows. I've booked more shows that way than any email I've ever sent. Mostly booking emails I send don't even get a reply. So I think it's all community building. Like you can send emails and have a great press kit and have all your ducks in a row, but if you're not going to shows and making an appearance and being and representing your band, things that you're not involved in, and supporting other people and making friends, no one's going to care, know who you are, and nobody's going to scratch your back when you need your scratch. So I think it's all community more than anything else. I think getting involved, paying the cover, buying another band shirt, and supporting them.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Is still the tried and true best way, regardless of how far social media has come. I think in-person community building is the best thing that I could probably advise.
Yeah, again, I agree. What do you think has been the hardest part about being in a band for you personally?
For me personally, I mean, this is going to be kind of a generic answer, I guess, but the pandemic was pretty tough, obviously. I think almost every band in the world that was abandoned during the pandemic would probably have that answer, not being able to play, not being able to see each other or rehearse, having to do shows like live stream them, Um, that was a challenging year. But outside of that, because that's kind of a generic response, I would probably say hardest part. Um, Probably learning to be coachable. Because when we were younger, like if I had an idea or someone else had an idea, we would have a lot of pride about it. And it's like, we got to use this riff or we got to do this song. And like I look back on some of those songs on some of the old records we did, and it's like, man, that song sucks really bad. And I was adamant about it being on that record. It had to be on there. I believed in that song. And maybe the guys in the band were like, hey, this is maybe not our best work, but and all three of us have been that way at some point where you're just married to it and it's got to be a song and you refuse to let it not exist. And, now we're kind of to the point where it's like, all right, if we're not all three feeling it and we can't get into it on stage and deliver a good show and we don't really like a song, our goal is like every song, all three of us have to like. And being comfortable and being okay with being told, hey, I don't really like your idea, that's a hard thing for a lot of people to stomach because some people have a lot of pride and they put a lot of work, but your idea doesn't always sound as good to other people, and just being able to be told no is definitely a huge thing. I can see why some people might like having a band of hired guns because they just do what they're told. But in a band like ours, having a three-way democracy, was definitely something that all three of us could have been better about in the beginning, but I feel like we're pretty good at it now. I'm not sure what the current hardest thing about being in the band is, but just being coachable was a tough one for a while. But luckily, I think we've improved on it.
Yeah. The next question might be a bit ignorant based on the previous one, but if we take that a slight step further, what would you say has been the hardest or most challenging part about being a musician for yourself in general?
For me in general, probably the adaptability you have to just be successful in the modern era. Because, it's like when I was a teenager, bands were on MySpace and Spotify didn't exist. I think iTunes was brand new. So being on MySpace was the big thing. And then Facebook comes out. And then it becomes right about Facebook likes. Then Instagram comes out. Then you have Spotify. Now we have TikTok. And I think just the amount of things that musicians have to learn to get good at, other than playing an instrument, is like ridiculous now, because we have to be our own promoters. We have to be our own booking agents. We have to be our own social media managers. We have to stay up on trends with social media and TikTok and advertising. Now we have to be content creators and influencers, because, you got to do cringy stuff on TikTok to go viral now. And, and now Spotify is a completely different platform than, iTunes or MySpace used to be. And then in 5 years, we'll probably have something completely different for social media and streaming. And then we have to deal with like the low stream pay and the merch cuts and stuff like that. And, if you don't have a graphic designer in your band, you got to go hire one. If you don't have, a good social media minded person in the band, sometimes you go hire one. If you don't know a lot of people, you got to go hire a booking agent. If you don't have a band of people with the same idea, you got to go hire a bass player. And it's the amount of shoes that I think most musicians are forced to wear, the different hats we're all forced to wear. I think discourages a lot of people, because, like, I think a lot of them think, shit, man, I signed up to play guitar. I don't want to be a social media influencer. I don't want to do a tech tutor. I don't want to be a booking agent. But if you don't have money and you're doing a grassroots kind of original rock band, you kind of got to figure it out. And I never in my life thought I'd be using a hashtag as much as I do, but every social media post, it's like, you got to get that discoverability up. You got to have hashtags. And last thing I want to do is be the social media guy, but it has to be done. Because this and how, it's like an integral part. Just like knowing your pentatonic blues scale, you got to know how to do Instagram. So, just the things that are not music related that musicians are forced to have to do, and learn how to do and adapt when they change. That's probably the hardest part for me personally.
Yeah, that's a decent answer. And, not to sort of go down a negative rabbit hole here, but what I've always found quite frustrating is, so you get good at these things. You get good at MySpace, and then the next one comes out, and the 2 years you spent developing a MySpace page now doesn't matter. So then you develop Facebook. Like it's a lot of time that could have gone into creating music, and that's like the worst part for me. As a creative mind, I kind of sit sometimes when I'm editing videos or cutting audio, whatever it is, and think to myself, man, like that heyday of bands that really got to just be bands. It must have been quite something, must have been just quite something. Okay, so, you gig a lot. You mentioned you guys do around 50 gigs a year. You travel all around Texas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you've got many more plans and probably have traveled further. But let's talk gig survival or travel survival type tips. Have you maybe got any, or, has anything made your life easier in this regard, gigging as much as you have? Have you figured anything out? Shortcuts, if you will.
Yeah. So this is one area that we're probably a little less experienced than we should be, and definitely less experienced than a lot of our colleagues. We've done, we do DFW a lot, but as far as traveling, we've done mostly regional stuff, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, a little bit of Louisiana, a little bit of Oklahoma, just stuff that's within like a 6-hour drive. We haven't done any kind of like major West Coast tour or any major thing where we've gone for like 2 or 3 weeks or more. So, not that we're not planning on it, we just haven't gotten to it yet. I think we spent a lot of time kind of just developing our local reputation and also just constantly trying to make a better record. And I think now that we've made a great record, we can probably focus on the travel aspect a little bit more. But that's sorry, that might have cut out. But yeah, we've sorry, I'm getting a call. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, we don't have a whole lot of experience. As much as we probably should with the traveling stuff. Some of our friends could definitely tell you better about it. But I guess the main thing that I really like about when we do travel is I bought a Honda Element and it's just the most awesome gig car. Like we can fit the combo amps or we can fit the drums, and it's in a van. And it's a great gig car. And I've really enjoyed having that. But yeah, really like tips for the road. I really don't have too many. That's kind of the one area where I wish we kind of did a little bit more, but we'll have to get to it soon.
Oh, you'll get there. What about recording studio tips? I mean, obviously we're living in a time now where a lot of guys have home studios. It sounded to me as if you guys still go into studios to make your records. Has there been any situation or type of scenario when you've gone to a studio that maybe you learned something along the way, sort of that maybe saved you time, which in turn saved you money, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So this is kind of the inverse of the last question. Where we do have a lot of experience is the studio, because that's kind of where we've put more of our focus and our time, rather than traveling as much as I would have liked to. We had spent a lot of time in the studio, and we've definitely got like certain things, that we kind of routinely like to do. Like I'm a big fan of layering guitars, like having the left channel and the right channel and just really giving it that big classic rock guitar sound. I like to double my vocals a lot. That's kind of like one of my signature things is I double almost all my vocals. And then, we've been putting a lot of extra thought into, some sampling and some other little things. Like whenever we finish like the guitar or the vocals or the drums, everybody's constantly thinking like, well, what else can I do? Because it's like our drummer Ryan has a sample pad and he'll like do extra vocals and he'll just contribute and literally anything he can. And I feel like a lot of people might get in there and be like, okay, I did my drums, I'm done. And we have this kind of like what now mentality. And I think that works well in the studio because it's like it really makes your track a lot more vibrant whenever you finish your part and you're like, well, what else can I do? What else little tiny thing can we add in to just make this a little more unique? And I think having everybody in the studio, like, when you finish your part, don't just go sit in the other room and have a coffee, listen to the other guys record for input. Maybe you'll get a new creative idea of something we can add in. Maybe you'll have a vocal harmony pop out that you'd like to record because, and I know that some people have that habit of like, okay, my guitars are done, I'm going to go hang out and chill and take a nap. Whereas if you have the whole band paying attention 100% of the time, you'll probably discover things that, hey, wow, we can add a shaker here, or we can add, an organ here. We, just something to pop out if you have everybody completely focused, like 100% of the time. And, it's like, just because your instrument's done, your job's not over, we all got to be paying attention to what each other is doing. And then we come well prepared. preparation for the studio is important to us. We come and I have all the guitars planned out for what song goes on, what guitar goes on what song, what amps, what effects. We've got everything game planned, notes written, so that when we go into the studio, it's not like we're figuring things out for the first time. It's like we already have the plan. That helps the day go by a lot easier. It makes the engineers happy, saves us some money because we get even more done if we're paying by the day or by the hour or whatever. So just preparedness, having your ducks in a row and having everybody focused the entire time and present the entire time, regardless if it's their turn in the booth or not. That's how it worked significantly well for us. Listening to engineers' advice, because having that fourth guy who's not in the band tell you like, hey, this note's a little shaky or whatever, then, having that fourth guy is really important to us. But that seems to work well for us in the studio. I think that's kind of all of our happy place. Like, I think we've sort of grown from, we love gigs and we love traveling when we can, but I think this year we really fell in love with making more stuff. And we're trying to get back in there this summer. So it's like, I think we can't get enough of it at this point, but.
That's amazing, dude. Riley, last question for you, dude. What do you feel has been the best piece of advice you've ever received, or something you've maybe learnt along the way in regards to your musical career?
Okay. Well, I've got a few different answers depending on how you want to look at it. But from a musical perspective, and I still try to do my best about doing this, but I had a buddy that, came over when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a lead guitarist, but I had never taken a lesson. And I was just kind of struggling, with the leads and the solos and stuff. And, he just said, learn the blues scale to start out. And then he was like, slow down. And I'm just kind of a high energy kind of guy. And, it kind of comes off in my playing, like sometimes it's like, you're rushing this part or it's getting a little too showy. And I still, have to give myself like mental therapy before every gig and be like, slow down, focus on the phrasing. Less is more. I kind of have to like routinely tell myself these mental things to like get into the mode for it. Cause I do kind of struggle with, going off at certain points or just being a little too energetic that the music or the phrasing suffers a little. So, learn the blues and slow down was probably the best guitar advice I've been given. And then, like we talked about earlier, the best, like, I guess from the business aspect, the best advice I was ever given was right around the time we finished our last record was, a certain, like I said earlier, a certain percentage of your budget, of making a record, have that saved for promo. And we had released albums before where kind of just put it on social media, put it on Facebook, and then kind of just waited around, maybe boosted a post on Instagram here or there. But we really didn't have any kind of promotional budget. We weren't budget minded about it. And, someone told us, I think it was a few years ago, just, whatever you spend to make the record, take 20%, find a way that works for you to advertise it. And that's kind of where I was with this last record was just, I actually believe in this one. I think every song's great. It's very cohesive. I think this is a very good, demonstration of what we can do. And we were told like, hey, be prepared to budget for it if you believe in it. I had been told that. So I was like, all right, so we got to be coachable and we got to, do what we're advised because we knew that what we had been doing just wasn't working. The last records would come out. Few people would buy it. Few people would stream it. Maybe a couple hundred streams, maybe 1,000 at most here or there. It just wasn't good enough after 12 years of doing this. So being told like, spend some money and be serious about it and promote it well, that actually ended up being some of the best advice I've ever been given because we did that. And, this record was pretty much blew all of our expectations away. So that's probably the best business side of running the band advice I've been given. But play the blues and slow down. That's probably my personal advice that I've been given that I like a lot.
That's amazing, dude. Riley Rogers, dude, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Cool conversation, man. I could talk bands all day. It's truly been a passion of mine. I've been in bands my whole life. And it's so funny how after doing so many interviews, it's like there's always these just little nuggets that are different for everybody. It blows my mind. So I thank you so much. I wish you guys nothing but the best. And hey, man, if you ever come down to Louisiana again, hit me up. We'll go for some beignets.
Yeah, would love to. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for talking to us. Anytime somebody wants to talk about our band a little bit, we definitely try to make time for it. And hopefully what we talked about a little bit today, about what's worked and not worked for me can hopefully help some of your listeners. So thanks again.
Thank you, man. Peace.
Yep. You too.
There we have it. Riley Rogers, everybody. This was episode 42. As usual, thank you to each and every one of you who are continuing to listen to this show. As mentioned at the start, please leave us a rating or review. You can also find out more about myself or the Musician's Mentor website at either travismark.com or musicians-mentor.com. Make sure you check out the Infamists. Make sure you check out Riley. If you find yourself in the Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth kind of area, make sure you go and just seek them out. They're a great band. If you want me to start asking any sort of different questions, please let me know. Just drop me an email. And I will see you on the next one. Keep pushing. Peace.
All right, here we go.
New Phineas and Ferb is here.
We're back, baby.
For 104 more days
I know what we're gonna do today.
of summer vacation.
I am ready for summer shenanigans. Let's do it. Oh, yeah.
All right! We're gonna bust Phineas and Ferb once and for all!
Are we gonna do this again?
New inventions, shenanigans, innators, adventures, and songs.
Brand new summer vacation.
New Phineas and Ferb starts June 5th on Disney Channel and next day on Disney Plus. On DisneyPlus.Disney.com.